Hey everyone, Patricia here, and continuing with As Told by Ginger month, I'm going to be discussing about what As Told by Ginger means to me. Right before I do that, I might as well give you a little story on how I got introduced to the show. Around 2000, I was turning 14, and I was entering in my first year of high school. I slowly got away from Nickelodeon because I felt like I was getting too old for it. A lot of the shows that I grew up with were pretty much over, and all these new shows started coming in that I just never really got interested in. 2000 was a bit of a rough year for a lot of people who were born in the late 80s and grew up throughout the entirety of the 90s like I was, in which we saw all the great classic shows, like the original three Nicktoons and Clarissa Explains It All, Pete and Pete, all that, Keenan and Kel, all the other Nicktoons such as Angry Beavers and Hey Arnold. But then around 2000, in which a lot of the Snick shows, the really popular ones like All That, Keenan and Kel, and Are You Afraid of the Dark, they were pretty much over. And they were replaced with a bunch of other shows that I didn't really know anything about. I felt like the network was going in a direction that just wasn't for me, and I decided to drift away from Cartoon Network. Even though that I love Cartoon Network, I'm a huge Cartoon Network fan. I've been a huge Cartoon Network fan pretty much since its inception in '92. I watched Cartoon Network just as much as I watched Nickelodeon. Maybe just a little bit more around the late '90s with Powerpuff Girls. But around 2000, 2001 was when I started getting into Toonami and Adult Swim, because I was at that age in which I could watch it, and I started watching a lot of the anime that was being presented there, like Dragon Ball Z and Cowboy Bebop, and I think Inuyasha and Yu Yu Hakusho was airing around that time. I don't remember. But I saw in the commercials that there was a show called Caitlin's Way that was geared towards more teenage girls. And I thought, that looks pretty interesting. I started watching it and I loved it. And then I saw another commercial that As Told by Ginger was coming out. And it looked like more of a, animated TV series for teenagers. I thought to myself, if it's like Caitlin's Way, I want to check it out. And then when I saw the first episode, I loved it. It was really, really gripping and captivating to me. I thought to myself, okay, now I need to know what happens next. And then episode 2 came along, and we had Carl and Maude, in which, Ginger, Dodie, and Macy had to do community service, and Carl meets up with the older woman, Maude. It wasn't until years later in which I found out, oh, this is basically a reference to the 1970s movie called Harold and Maude, which I saw about 4 years ago, and I really, really liked it. Really interesting movie. It was pretty much similar to what the show portrayed, in which it's about a younger man falling in love with a much older woman. It's a little bit different, of course, but it got the references pretty well. And then when I continued watching more of the show, I was like, it's pretty interesting because there weren't a lot of Nickelodeon shows at the time that had a continuing story arc. The only time in which I saw that, for the most part, was in anime. And I wanted to watch more of it. And then afterwards, when I saw more of it, there were a lot of interesting lessons and there were a lot of interesting morals that were portrayed there. Like, one of my favorites was Hello Stranger. And Hello Stranger is about Ginger receiving a message from her father pretty late. It was a graduation letter that was about a few months late. And she thought to herself, there's an event going on in my school. I want to invite him over so he can see me. And then afterwards, she writes this beautiful poem. And the poem was about, how she sees her father as. And, then the ending in which, she receives the beautiful bouquet of flowers from her dad. And then there's a little bit of a plot twist involved, which just makes it so worth it. You should definitely check it out. It meant a lot to me because when I was a kid, my parents were separated. My father still remained in his home in New York City. My mother, my sister, and I, we moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Every other weekend, we would come to see him. And while I was always excited to see him at New York when I visited him, for the most part, whenever I was, going through something like at school, I always felt like I needed somebody else other than just my mom. I needed a father around. Eventually, a few years later, my parents did get back together, which was great. But the lesson that I learned from As Told by Ginger is that, you know, family can be a very fickle thing. Sometimes families, they go through their problems, and sometimes we fix them, sometimes we can't fix them, and sometimes they just, there's nothing you can really do about it. That doesn't mean that they don't love you, it's just that there's just a power that sometimes we can't control. And it pretty much goes through the rest of the series like that. Another episode that really touched me in season 1 was Come Back Little Seal Girl. That's the episode in which Dodie, Ginger, and Macy, they want to perform in the talent show, and Macy suggests why don't we do this little dance on the little seal girl? And Dodie and Ginger are kind of hesitant because they did that stuff when they were like little kids, and they want to move on to more of the teenager stuff. I can relate to this a lot because there's always that part in our lives in which we have to think to ourselves, do we really want to let go of our childish things? Do we have to put away some things that meant a lot to us when we were kids so that we can start growing up? I mean, for the most part, of course, there are some things that eventually you have to move on with. But then there's some things that really mean a lot to you that you just can't let go because it has such a huge staying power. Whether it be a doll or a toy or maybe a blanket or a movie or a TV show. Something that really touched your heart when you were a kid. Something that got you something so horrible and you needed something to comfort you when nobody else was around. If you let go of that, then it's like losing a part of yourself. And with Macy, having to wonder about whether to let go of the little seal girl, something that really meant a lot to her when she was a kid because Dodie and Ginger would perform that song all the time, and that was like a favorite childhood memory of hers. It's like, should I let this go and move on because I'm turning 13? And then eventually when she performs that song in front of everybody, and everybody's laughing at her because it looks so ridiculous, and then when she gains the confidence to sing out loud, to portray that she loves a little seal girl, and she's not afraid of what anybody else would say, she gets this huge, outstanding applause. And that just goes to show you that, yes, there are going to be some things that you have to let go and you have to move on with because you're an adult. But at the same time, there are some things that you can still keep and you can still be proud of. Like, for example, when I was getting into college, a lot of people were telling me about, why are you watching anime? Anime's like for little kids. Don't watch that. That's not for you. Or, why are you collecting all these posters of all these cartoons? You mean, you're an adult, why, that stuff is for like little kids. It's like, the reason why is because that stuff means a lot to me. There were some personal things about it that I can't just let go. I have a lot of DVDs of Nickelodeon shows that I grew up with that I would pop in every once in a while, and I just feel so happy, and I would just remember on some memory of when I first saw it and all the events that happened. You shouldn't have to. You should be proud of showcasing on what you love, regardless of what people think of you. If you love a cartoon because not only it makes you laugh, but also you're able to gain something from it, you're able to become inspired by it, then don't let anybody else tell you what to do on letting it go. If you have a little doll right by your bed that used to keep you company, or that you held on to when you were scared at night, or when your parents were arguing and you held it so you can feel safe, you're gonna get rid of that because you're turning into an adult? No, you show it, you be proud of it, you hold it with dignity. I mean, my friend James from Manic Expression, he's had this little teddy bear ever since he was a baby, and he's like over his 30s now, and he still holds it proudly. I'll definitely have to talk about that at some point because that's going to play into a lot on why I love the little Seal Girl episode. And then eventually, as time went on, I started seeing a lot of the changes that As Told by Ginger was doing in the second season. Like, the clothes changing. I'd never seen that in a Nickelodeon show. Maybe occasionally they would change the clothes, but in almost every single episode, that was something I never seen before. And not to mention that they were telling a lot more dramatic stories with serious lessons to be learned if you're a teenager. like, Gym Class Confidential, in which they taught you about puberty. And then the episode And She Was Gone, in which they taught you about suicide. That was really captivating for me. And it's an episode that I still remember to this day. And then there were the TV movies. Summer of Camp Caprice was not my favorite, but Far From Home was incredible. It just showcases on that everybody's moving on with their lives. And I felt that way when I graduated from high school and moved on to college. The same way in which Ginger, she went on her first semester onto the academy, and she met up with all these new people, and she even changed her hair color, and she met up with the new students, and all of her friends are missing her, and they're calling her and saying, hey, we miss you, come back home, and she's really happy over there. And then eventually, we have Darren coming over to her and proclaiming his love for her. And, that was like really, really memorable to me, because I felt like when I graduated from high school and moving on to college, there were some people that I had become friends with, and I didn't know that I was ready to move on. I didn't know if I was ready to go to the next step and going into this new scary world. Because, college is a lot different than high school, that's for sure. But I took a chance, and college became such an amazing experience for me. In fact, I have so many fond memories of college, like getting to have my first paying job, making a whole ton of friends, meeting up with Will from Willvolution, and joining up with the gaming group, joining my first anime club, holding a bunch of tournaments over at the my college's gaming room, and, just working on my school assignments and wanting to become, an administrative assistant. Just so many great things happened over there. And with As Told by Ginger, she was able to take in a lot of things when she was in that academy. And when she got back home, she was able to have that relationship with Darren, which was a major change that happened, especially around season 3. Unfortunately, season 3 was where I had the least memories with, because, well, the schedule changes were already a pain as it was. After season 2, they started changing the schedules a lot, because that was when Teen Nick was starting, and they decided, hey, let's put our teenage shows into Teen Nick and leave Nickelodeon over for the younger kids. Made sense, of course. And they changed their schedules a lot. Like, one time it was like around 8 p.m., one time it was around 6 p.m., sometimes it was in the afternoon, sometimes it was Friday, sometimes it was Sunday. It became a mess. I lost track of it for a long time. And then eventually they started airing As Told by Ginger on the Nicktoons network. And at the time, I didn't have the Nicktoons network, so I couldn't watch it anymore. And then eventually, after season 3, the last episodes, they never aired in the US. I didn't know about it until years later when I looked it up online that they all aired in Canada. And the sad part of it is that I didn't see the season finale, The Wedding Frame, until 2010 or 2011. And when I first saw it, I didn't see the rest of the episodes of As Told by Ginger. They weren't up on YouTube yet. I don't even think they were even on iTunes yet. So I was confused when I first saw it. I mean, granted, one of the great things about As Told by Ginger was that it had a continuing story arc. You have to watch the first episode, otherwise you'll get lost. Not like a lot of Nicktoons at the time, in which you can watch episode 5 or episode 10 or episode 50, in which, I don't have to worry about the story playing into this episode because it's a standalone episode, or I don't have to worry about this character going through something because the status quo will kind of reset everything and it'll be as if nothing happened. No, As Told by Ginger was not like that at all. Absolutely not. If something happened in As Told by Ginger, it stays permanent. There have been a few occasions, but for the most part, if something happens, they reference it a lot. And that's why you have to watch As Told by Ginger all the way from the first episode onward. You cannot skip anything, I can assure you. Even if the episode sucks, they will reference it in some way, shape, or form. And when I saw The Wedding Frame, I was lost. There were so many characters that were introduced to the show, so many plot elements that kind of confused me. I mean, I loved it, but I was still kind of scratching my head. Then, a few years later, when they started putting the shows on iTunes and they had it up on YouTube, I reran through the entire show, and then I saw The Wedding Frame again, and then I got everything about it. I started rewatching As Told by Ginger when I was just starting the Nickelodeon tribute back in 2011. And I gotta say that I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion for a lot of you people. As Told by Ginger is hands down the best Klasky Csupo Nicktoon ever, and I think it still holds up today. In fact, I think it holds up even better than Rugrats. Yeah, I said that. I cannot wait for the hateful comments down below. So, when looking back on As Told by Ginger for its 15 years that it originally aired, I think it holds a lot for people who grew up with it. I think it shows a ton of things that for people who may have not seen it or maybe hadn't given it a chance. And it's understandable why some people wouldn't have given it a chance, because the animation is very rough. It's really dramatic at times. It's not really a show that I would watch if I want to laugh. It's a show that you watch and you appreciate. There's always those one shows in which you watch it when you're a kid, but when you're an adult, you're able to find something about it that you never realized when you saw it the first time. As Told by Ginger is one of those shows. And it brought in a lot of memories. It gave me a bigger appreciation on storytelling, on character growth, on plots. And it would, you know, in my opinion, it would be kind of like the foundation for other shows like that, like My Life as a Teenage Robot, Danny Phantom, Avatar, Korra, in which they do keep continuity and they're able to develop great stories. And, you know, As Told by Ginger was definitely a show that did that first, and it did it really, really well. It stood out amongst all the other Nicktoons that came out back then, and even since then. And, you know, I'm hoping that As Told by Ginger will gain an audience that it never did back in 2000. It's been airing on the Splat, which is fantastic. And I've been seeing a lot of people on Twitter talk about how great the show is, or people who are saying, oh, I never knew that this show was so great, I should have given it a chance. And even for As Told by Ginger month, I've been receiving a ton of positive comments on thanking me for talking about this great show, and you know, saying that I really, really appreciated this show. Meant a lot to me when I was a kid, and I hope that you continue with it. You know what? No, thank you. Thank you for watching this stuff, because, you know, as somebody who is a huge fan, I'm hoping that we can be able to share and we can be able to talk about our memories of As Told by Ginger. That way more people can get into it. That way more people can see what we love about it. And if they don't care about it, that's perfectly fine. I mean, that's their opinion. It's not for everyone. But I'm hoping that at some point, the show will gain a bigger recognition, and it will be able to maybe have other inspirational shows just like it in the future. But mostly, I want to thank Emily Kapnick, who created this show. She's an amazing writer, and someone who took in her experiences and was able to put it into As Told by Ginger that we can all be able to relate to. And then later on, she created other shows such as Suburgatory and Selfie. If you want to see a live-action version of As Told by Ginger, taking in the similar elements that the show brought in, Suburgatory is a great show to watch. It has a lot of the same things that As Told by Ginger has. You should check it out. So, for anybody who's watching, thank you so much for watching this video. And thank you so much for watching the From Pilot to Final Product and the interview that I had with Michelle. I got 2 more videos coming up about As Told by Ginger. One of them is going to be my top 15 As Told by Ginger episodes. And the other one is going to be my review on I Spy a Witch, which will be coming out on Halloween. So, I hope that you look forward to that. Until then, see you later.